Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are all doing very well. If you are new here, my name is Sophia, and I make bookish videos, mainly videos about literary fiction and mystery thriller books, but also a little bit of everything. And today is very much in the a little bit of everything category, as I'm going to be chatting about all of the books that I read during the month of January, and it was a hodgepodge. It was a lot of different things, and so I'm excited to get into it. Before I start, though, there is some type of gale warning going on outside, and so the wind is like rattling my windows, which feels very on brand for a January wrap up. But if you can hear rattling in the background, I apologize. That is the wind. Maybe that'll add to the vibes. So in today's video, I'm going to be chatting about 5 books. I did read a couple of other books in the month, but I am going to be talking about them in my February wrap up because they were for a themed video that is not going to be going up yet, so I don't want to spoil that. But if you do follow me on Goodreads, there are a couple of other things that you'll see on there that I'm not chatting about, and that is the reason why. As per usual, I will be talking about my least favorite books first, all the way leading up to my favorite book of the month. And for the most part, this month was pretty meh in terms of my rating. I had between 3 and 3.5 stars, although a new series that I really love and am excited to read more from. And then one absolute standout 5-star book that is most definitely going to be in my favorite books of the year video at the end of the year, which is just a great way to start out and a great thing to have happen in January. So enough rambling. Let's get into the first book that I read. So the first book that I'm going to chat about is The Raging Storm. This is the 3rd installment in the Matthew Venn series by Cleeves. And I will always remember reading this because I read this on New Year's Day. Tyler and I had gone to a cabin to celebrate New Year's Eve and New Year's Day with Tyler, myself, and a couple of our friends. And we stayed up very late, of course, on New Year's Eve. And I remember New Year's Day, we were all just late lounging on the couch. I think we stayed in our PJs all day. It was very much a vibey, chilled out day. And I was just making my way through this book. So certainly was a core reading memory of January. But anyways, this is a police procedural. It takes place in Devon, which was once kind of a more remote part of England, but then, has become more tourist ridden over the years. And it follows 3 main detectives. Every book, they investigate a new crime. The main character, of course, is Matthew Venn. And then there's also Jen Rafferty and Ross, who are other kind of detectives in the group. So this book follows a infamous sailor named Jem. He was very famous in a small town, pretty close, honestly, to where the detectives live, but they're kind of called out to solve this case and travel a little bit. And he turns up dead in a dinghy, little boat, kind of docked off of the, one of the areas in the town. And so in this mystery, they're really diving into a lot of the people in his past and really looking into this small town and uncovering secrets there. It takes place in a very raging storm that is in the fall time. And so it's quite atmospheric and very kind of moody. Some of the themes that are really delved into are love and fame. And of course, as with, a lot of different police procedurals, you learn bits more about the different detectives as the story goes on. So a little bit more about Matthew Venn, who is a character who's very rule-oriented and loves to kind of make sure everything is done by the book, but also has a pretty tumultuous background, having grown up in a religious cult and then coming out as a gay man. And so he has a lot of bad blood between him and his family, his mother, and a lot of the people surrounding the community. And then also Jen Rafferty's perspective is also really interesting. She is a single mother and is kind of struggling with the work-life balance of being a detective and taking care of her kids. And so you get little bits of their character development as well as this interesting little mystery. Overall, I'm continuing to enjoy this series. It is kind of a core mystery series in my life at the moment. moment, and I am picking up the new installments as they come out. This one just didn't have quite the drive for me. I wasn't as attached to this mystery as I have been to some of the others in the series. Nothing like outrageously terrible about it, but it just hasn't been my favorite so far, but still planning to continue on. And it's definitely a mystery series that I am thoroughly invested in at this point. So excited for when Anne Cleeves is going to announce the next installment in this one. I ended up giving this a 3 stars. Next up, we have another mystery, Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. I do have a full spoiler-free review of this on my channel, so if you'd like to hear all of the thoughts about this one, I'll link you over there. But overall, this is a book that follows a man named Grady Green. He is kind of an up-and-coming writer, and it starts one night when he's awaiting a phone call, hopefully to tell him that he is a New York Times bestseller, a dream that he's had for almost his whole entire life. But he's very frustrated because he always thought that his wife, Abby, would be there to, celebrate this moment or be there to support him. And she's late coming home from work and he's frustrated with her. So eventually he gives her a call on the phone, and that phone call is just engraved in his mind forevermore because of what happened. On the phone, Abby says that she's headed home. She's sorry she's late. And then Grady hears screeching tires. The car kind of screeches to a halt, and then the phone goes dead. And no one has seen Abby for a year. His life has kind of been turned upside down. He's going through depression. He can't write. And so his publisher says that it might be a good idea for you to get a change of scenery. So he goes to a kind of abandoned island. This is 1 year after the accident, and tries to get his writing life back together. And the mystery really goes from there. I did enjoy this for most of it. It is very, very readable. You can certainly read this in like 1 to 2 days. It's pretty short. But I did find some of the twists at the end of this book to be a little bit ridiculous. So it wasn't my favorite Alice Feeney, although still certainly an enjoyable read, even if I did have quite a few issues with it. Next up, we have People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This has finally caught me up on all of the Emily Henry books just in time for her newest publication that is coming out this spring. This is a book about 2 really good friends, Poppy and Alex. They met in college, and basically a lot of their friendship has revolved around these trips, these vacations that they take. Poppy is a vacation blogger, and Alex and Poppy are just, of course, really good friends. And so he kind of tags along, and they've been on many iconic trips over the years, and overall just really enjoy each other's company. But of course, with a lot of male-female friendships over time, there's always been a question of, if this was ever going to be something more, or if they were ever going to be in a romantic relationship. So the point where we kind of meet these 2 characters is after something has happened about a year ago on a trip, and they haven't spoken for quite a long time in that whole period. And they start texting again, and eventually decide to go on one more trip together. But you don't really know what happened, what drama happened on a year ago that caused them to have the issues that they're currently having. So it kind of revolves around that. This very much felt like When Harry Met Sally, which is probably my favorite film of all time. Okay, maybe not my favorite film, but one of my favorite films, if not my favorite rom-com-y film. That quintessential friends to lovers trope. Poppy definitely reminds me of Meg Ryan in that movie. Very eccentric, has a lot of very specific preferences, and I just love that film so much. And there are a lot of nods in this book to that movie. They both went to University of Chicago, and they went on a road trip starting at University of Chicago, which is an iconic moment in When Harry Met Sally. And so I kept trying to compare this book to that film, fairly or unfairly, probably unfairly, and it kept disappointing me and frustrating me because it didn't have that same spark that I get when I watch When Harry Met Sally. not to say that this is a bad book, but for whatever reason, there just wasn't that connection that I felt between the characters, or at least that romantic connection. And so I ended up giving this one a 3 stars as well. It just didn't have the same like Emily Henry spark that I'm used to, but still a solid romance book, a solid, audiobook for the car, but just not a new favorite, not my favorite of hers. After reading that romantic audiobook, I kind of went into like a romance audiobook frenzy, and I started the Abby Jimenez Part of Your World series, which are currently 3.5 books surrounding some characters that live in Minnesota. You can read them as separate books. Like you don't have to read book 1 to understand what's going on in book 3, but there's a lot of good Easter eggs if you read all of them together. It kind of completes the experience a little bit. I cannot explain how much I love listening to these audiobooks. They are just like the warm, fluffy, plotty, romance novels that you want to listen to when it's like cold outside and you're on your way to work and you're just like not feeling it. It just, they're great. They really have well-rounded characters. They have plots and romantic connections that you can get behind. And so far I've just been really loving them. I'm in the middle of book 3 right now, but I did read the first 2 in January. So the first one is Part of Your World. It follows Alexis, who is an emergency medicine physician at a very highly ranked hospital called Rayum Northwestern in Minnesota. And she is from a family of very kind of prominent physicians who are very important in the hospital. They have, long run the hospital, and they always wanted her to be a surgeon, but she kind of went against the grain and became an emergency medicine physician. And the love interest is named Daniel. He lives in a middle of nowhere town called Waukon, and they kind of have a little bit of a meet cute. Her car breaks down and he fixes her car. And so starts this like inconvenient romance plot. Alexis is going through a tough breakup with the head of surgery, and Daniel is just her comfort person. And so starts this relationship. Their lives really don't go together in any possible way. Alexis is this city girl who has all these expectations to be high up in the hospital system, and Daniel lives in the country in a very small town where everyone knows everyone else. I think it's like 2 hours from where Alexis lives. He has a goat that he takes care of, and they just don't make any sense, but they have to confront all of those challenges. And it's just like, there are tough things brought up in this book, certainly, but at the same time, it is just such a heartwarming romance that I absolutely loved. Trigger warning in this one for a lot of abuse, emotional and physical abuse, particularly in intimate relationships. So just prepare yourself for that if you're going into it. I did give this one a 3.5 stars. Then, after really enjoying that one, I decided to move on to book 2 in the series, which is Yours Truly. This follows Brianna, who is Alexis's best friend, also an emergency medicine physician at Rayum Northwestern. And she went through a very tumultuous divorce several years ago with a guy who essentially cheated on her. And she has been in this, dating app roulette, essentially, going on terrible dates and really not enjoying herself. But then there's a new emergency medicine physician who is working in her department. His name is Jacob Maddox, and they kind of become intertwined. So Jacob has unfortunately just gotten out of a relationship, and his ex-girlfriend is now planning to marry Jacob's brother. And so his family, of course, has, a lot of concerns about this. They're really worried about how Jacob might be feeling. And so Brianna and Jacob agree to a fake dating to essentially appease Jacob's family. And so lots of fake relationship tropes. Another little twist in the story is Brianna's brother has end-stage renal disease, and he is awaiting a kidney donor. And it just so happens that Jacob is a perfect match. And so there's that whole other wrinkle in the story as well. Brianna is very spunky, very fun to read. Her personality like absolutely jumps off the page. There is a little bit more annoying miscommunication in this one than there was in part of Your World, but still, I really loved their connection. I loved a lot of aspects to the story. I loved the discussion about chronic illness, particularly with Brianna's brother, and I gave this one a 3 stars. Really, really enjoyed it overall. As I said, I'm about halfway through Just for the Summer, which is the 3rd in the series, and it follows Brianna's brother's friend Justin and this girl named Emma, and I'm also enjoying that one, but I will chat with you guys a little bit more about that in February, as I'm not quite finished with it. And last but certainly not least, my absolute favorite book of the month was Brain on Fire by Susannah Cahalan. This is a memoir. It was actually for an in-person book club that I'm a part of with one of my really good college friends. And this is about a reporter for the New York Post who is recounting essentially her experience with a psychiatric illness. So, basically she was living a very independent, normal life. And then all of a sudden she started to experience psychosis. It started out with her thinking that there were bed bugs in her apartment when there weren't, and then developed from there. Ultimately, she ended up being admitted to the hospital for several weeks, undergoing very intense treatments, medical workup, imaging, everything to find out why this happened. It's really her recounting her story with the illness from what she remembers, and also what other family members told her that she can't quite remember, and then her experience with recovery and trying to find who she is again after this experience. This story has so many heartbreaking elements to it, from the people that didn't listen to her or kind of brushed off her symptoms, to the way that she lost weeks of her life that she didn't really remember what happened, to trying to find herself and the really tumultuous and difficult recovery. It truly was heartbreaking on so many levels, but also had a lot of hope in it. There's a line at the end where Susannah Cahalan says, if I could have had this or not, would you have wanted it? And she said, ultimately, I would have still chosen to have this illness because of that it's, given me the ability to advocate for things that I didn't know about before. And so while it is a truly devastating book, it also has a lot of hope in it. The writing in this book is phenomenal, and I highly recommend the audiobook, which she narrates. I think it's just brings that extra element of, it being such a personal story that she's telling you in her own voice. I definitely want to read more medical memoirs. I find that genre just to be so interesting, and this was an absolutely fantastic book that I gave 5 stars. It feels weird rating a memoir, but I can't give it anything obviously other than 5 stars because it was absolutely phenomenal, and I would highly recommend it. So those are all of the books that I ended up reading in January. Almost all the books. As I said earlier, there is going to be kind of probably a big February wrap up because of the way that timing worked out. But I'd love to know what you thought of the books that I have talked about today. If you've read any of them, what you thought of them. Do you ever just get in a phase where you just need to read all of one genre like I was with romance audiobooks this month? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that, I will see you guys all very soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.